Okay, so now that I have a smattering of these pardons that I can work with, so you'll see that I've got, in this case, 6 different points. You will probably have more, but you can see that I've got my subject tags from before. I have my descriptions of varying degrees. I have my photo source, I have my URLs, I have the date, and I have the work title. So I have all of the things. And so to put it into GIS, I'm going to save this as a CSV, and I'm going to call this one geotagged pardons, and I'm going to put this in my folder. And so I'm going to put this there, and I'm going to save that, and yes, that's fine. I'm not going to be worrying about that. And so then from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up QGIS. And so this is the latest version of QGIS. It was only released a couple of weeks ago. It doesn't really matter which version as long as you have one of the later 3 versions. So I think the last one was 3.36, which was Maidenhead. And so it's going to load up and you're going to create a new empty project in this case, or if you already have a project that you've dealt with, then you can open up that one. So I'm going to click at the top and I'm going to add in my file. I'm going to add in my geotagged ones. If you want other ways you can add in data, be sure to see one of the other videos that's linked up there. And so I'm going to hit add, and now we have these 6 tags. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start designing a map that I want. Now, one of the first things for me personally is that I want some way to reference this. And so I want some sort of way that looks nice on a website that is going to have a base map attached to it. And so to get a base map, there's a couple of different things that you can do, but generally speaking, these base maps are in the plugins. And so if I go to the top here, I can go to manage and install plugins, and probably the one that I use most commonly for this, but you can search, right? You can search out base maps and it's going to show all the different things that might have base maps. I typically use this HCMGIS one, and the reason for it is that it has a couple of the common ones. So you have Google, you have OpenStreet, you have the Esri ones, and I do like the look of the Esri ones. And so you're going to want to install the plugin down here if you don't have it installed. I already have this one installed, so that's fine, so I'm going to close that out. So once you have it installed, this particular plugin is going to create a new thing at the top here. It's going to have this HCMGIS here. And so you can see that you can do other things with it. So it does have other things, but the thing I care about most for this is this top one that's called base maps. And these base maps are all of the different things that you can do. So you can take a look and you can be like, oh, I want Google, right? So super common Google look. I'm going to get rid of that one. It's not my shtick. So for this one, what I typically go with is one of the dark ones. So I like dark theme everything. And so in this case, I'm going to go with Esri Dark Gray. It's not the only one you can do, but I do like this particular one. And now, as a little bonus, I'm going to show you how you can create the Esri Firefly effect with these points if you happen to like that. And so this makes it look like it's, think of it kind of like the light maps. And so I'm going to do that over in Properties. And so in Properties, I'm just going to keep it as a single marker. I don't really need to put this as different types or different tags. That's not what this particular web map is going to be about. This web map is going to be very simple. One set of things is locating those things with pop-ups that show the different things, just like we've already done. And so I head over into this simple marker. I'm going to drop this to something a little bit smaller. So I'm going to drop this to something like 0.8, let's go with. And then I'm going to choose what color I want. So I'm going to put these out as red. You can put it out as whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. And then this is good. So that's the color, right? And so then what I want to do is I want to get rid of this line because I don't want the line. And what I can do though is down at the bottom here, it has draw effects. And draw effects allows you to add glows. And so you can have inner glows or outer glows, which is one of the ways that you can create this firefly effect. And so I'm going to add an outer glow and click on it, and that's where the options are going to pop up. And so I'm going to change these over into points in both of these cases, and this just shows you how big it's going to be. So if I leave this as millimeters, right, and then I'm going to hit OK on this, then you can see that I've got these red points with this kind of like large white kind of glow around it. It's too large for the amount of point that I actually have here. So I'm going to drop this down into these points in this case, and that's going to drop it down. So basically I'm doubling the size of my points, and I'm blurring it out a little bit farther. And so then what I'm also going to do is I don't want this to have a white background, right? You can kind of see down here that this is a fairly big contrast. And so instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a ramp, and I'm going to ramp it with the reds. And so I'm going to apply that. And so what that does is it adds this kind of little blur attached to it, this little glow, but it's not as dark or it's not as stark of a contrast. And so it just adds just a little bit so that it starts popping out. And when you get a lot of those, then this is where you get that kind of firefly effect. And so that is what these ones are. Some people like a little bit bigger pixels, a little bit more glow. That's fine. With the amount of points that I typically deal with, which are usually in the thousands, it usually gets too much if I don't have them this small. But that is how you can create that firefly effect. Very commonly in the firefly effect are going to be these nice cyans or these very bright neon greens. Those ones are very, very commonly seen. I typically stick to reds, yellows, and whites personally, but it doesn't mean that having those cyans and greens can't also be pretty. Okay, and so now with that, what we're going to do is we're going to start taking a look at how we can put together our web map. And so with this, right, so we're happy with what those look like, but we need to start putting together all of the different components. And so to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to start and we're going to go up to projects, and we're going to go to project properties. And so this is the very first thing that we can do, because this is where you essentially are putting in the metadata of your map, right? And so you can give it, in this case, a title and an abstract that are going to show up in what your web map is. So in this case, I'm going to say that these are the pardon requests and granted pardons for larceny, because those are the data sets that I chose. And so then in my abstract, I can put a much more extensive thing if I want to. So I can say that that these are the pardon requests and the granted pardons and the pardons granted for the crime of larceny in the state of Mississippi during the Civil War and Reconstruction era. Data was taken from the Civil War and Reconstruction Governors of Mississippi letters. For more information on this data, you see cwrgm.org. You can find more content, more analysis of the trends of the pardon trends. More discussion of the pardon trends at insert project URL. Okay, so now I've got some sort of title and some sort of abstract, right? So I'm just giving a bit of a description about what's going on. Now this can be much more extensive, right? You can have much more information in here if you want. I've only put a little bit of information, mostly because this data set I haven't analyzed and there's only a few points, right? So, but if you actually have a lot of information attached to this, then put in more, give people a good description about what your map is. If it's a standalone thing, this can be really helpful. And so this is going to be the first one, and I'm going to say, yep, that's great. That's what I want. And now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to do it with all of the information that is for our geotagged layer. And so I'm going to go to properties, and I'm going to start over in this source, and I'm going to give this a much prettier name. And I'm going to say that these are the pardon requests. I'm going to say that these are the letters with pardon request for larceny, right? So in this case, because this is just this front-facing alias, this is where I can do things with spaces and nice fancy characters. So that's the first thing that we're going to do. And the second thing we're going to do is we're going to head down into what's called these attributes form. So the attributes form here is where you can start adjusting what the look and feel of your different pop-up is going to look like. And so you're going to work with this in here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to identifier. Now, all of these are, you can see, have this basic tag that we've already seen. And so in this case, this one says identifier, and we're going to want to think about what things we want to be able to see. Now, I kept this identifier tag because getting rid of identifier tags in GIS is usually bad practice. But realistically, we don't need to see this in our actual web map. And so what I'm going to do is this is giving you the type of information that this data actually has in it. And so what I'm actually going to do here is I'm just going to hide it. And same thing with the subject latitude and longitude. The data is already visible. We don't need to see what that subject latitude and longitude is. So I'm going to flip this into hidden. Now, you'll notice that this won't change anything in your attribute table. That's fine. That's not what this is designed to do. And so then we have photo, description, work title, date, and document URL. So the photo is going to stay as this text editor here, and that's perfectly fine. And so I'm going to not have a tag on this. So I'm going to leave this alias because I'm going to hide what this is in the pop-up anyways. Description, I'm actually going to change this into something like letter description or something that has a bit of information about it. Now, I may choose to hide this later on, but I'm just going to have something there in case I don't want to. And then here I'm going to put this as the document name or the document title. In this case, it says work title in there. I'm just going to call it document title. Date is fine as it is, and then I am going to put in this document URL here, but I'm going to add a space instead of that underscore. And so then we have all of that. Now, all of these, so you'll notice that this one has a date time, that's fine, but everything else is a text one, and that is perfectly fine. Even the photo one, and the photo one we're going to keep as a text one because it already has the HTML attached to it. And so that's all we're going to do. Now, you can already see that if we had stayed with that original data set, this would have been a lot more work because we would have to have been hiding things, we would have had to have been adjusting things, we would have had to have been reordering things, because this order is the order that's going to show up in the pop-up. So it's going to go photo, then description, then work title, date, document URL, and that's what it would do it as. And so this one, you don't want to have it, you don't want to have that much work, and so this is the simplest way that we can do it. We hid 3 of those, we have this as our pop-up, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to be back here in a sec, and we're going to actually throw this up into a web map.